Welcome back to Decoding the Conflict Mindset. I'm Dr. Deborah Dupree, the Mindset Doc and host of this podcast. I am delighted to bring back a second time our featured guest speaker today, Jeff Zaino. Jeff is actually a vice president with the American Arbitration Association, headed in Manhattan, New York. And before when he was here, we were just getting into the whole COVID thing and what was happening with technology and mediation, arbitration, and so forth. Well, he's back to talk about the future of ADR in the post-pandemic technological era. Jeff will bring us up to date, help us understand some of the trends, and particularly for those lawyers, mediators, and arbitrators who may still be struggling with the virtual world of doing meetings. So please don't go away. If you haven't already, subscribe. Let your friends, colleagues, family members know about this exciting episode so that you too can be clued in on the future of technology as it applies to ADR practices. We'll be starting shortly. Well, welcome to Decoding the Conflict Mindset. Again, I'm Dr. Deborah Dupree, the Mindset Doc, and I'm here to bring you yet another enlightening guest speaker, Jeff Zaino. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, how you doing, Deborah? Great to be here.
Thank you, and welcome back, I should say, because you and I got together back in 2020, and we know what year that represented.
Oh,
and
yes.
Part of our conversation was all about, the rapid transition of the legal community into the unknown world of Zoom and virtual platforms, right?
Yes, absolutely. It was a very strange time for us at AAA and elsewhere.
Absolutely. And, and so I thought it'd be so intriguing to bring you back, nearly 3 years later, and to talk about just where have things evolved, what's going on, and where do you see things going, Jeff? Because as I'll let you say your title at the American Arbitration Association, but the AAA does mediations and arbitrations worldwide, right?
Yep, absolutely. We are the biggest ADR provider in the world. We do over 500,000 cases a year at AAA. You can go on our webpage and see a running ticker of the cases that we're doing. And we do all areas of the law. My area is the commercial area. I'm the commercial vice president based in New York City. I oversee New York and also New England. That means I oversee the panel of arbitrators, the caseload, and also business development efforts and educational efforts like this.
Wonderful. Yes. It's certainly definitely a forerunner in the industry. And I'm very proud to be a mediation panel member. So value my association with the AAA tremendously. So thank you for
all you do so much training with us. We appreciate that greatly. And with my colleague, Harold Coleman, you do a great job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's very enjoyable. And so, Jeff, let's get right to the meat of things. And
sure.
So, again, we all have experienced this transition to the virtual world. Some people have gone totally back in person. Many people remain remote in whatever facets they are. And some of us are in a hybrid world. And so, where do you see the greatest request for technology today? What's sort of the heartbeat of the industry from your perspective?
Well, we're seeing, the transition back, like you said, we're starting to see more and more hearings in person. We did, like we talked 3 years ago, we went completely virtual, and that was using the technology, and all of my colleagues, 670 employees, went virtual. All the technology was sent to our homes, and we were really concerned at that point about the generational gap and whether or not our arbitrators could handle it. And they did a great job. They could handle it. We did thousands and thousands of cases using technology, various virtual platforms, mostly Zoom. Well, we used other platforms, and we were able to mobilize quickly, and that was great. And now we're coming back. We probably do a number of hearings now in person. I would say 40% to 50% back to normal with respect to in-person hearings, mostly for arbitrations. With mediations, I'm seeing they're staying remote using obviously the virtual technology. And what I'm seeing at my office with respect to technology, people want hybrid too. So what we're seeing is we're using these voice activated cameras in our offices around the country. In my office in Midtown Manhattan, we installed a lot of them in many of our hearing rooms. We have 14 hearing rooms there, and I think half of them have the voice activated cameras. And no longer are we seeing the days of the witnesses flying in for 1 hour testimony from Paris or wherever. So a lot of the witnesses are remote if we are doing an in-person hearing, and we're using that technology, the cameras in the rooms. But the interesting thing is that we saw is when everyone came back, or the 40% that came back that are doing in-person hearings, a lot of the arbitrators and the parties expect technology in the room now more than ever. So now we installed a lot of monitors in the rooms, and the arbitrators now, a lot of them have gone paperless, which was kind of nice. And what we do now, we have iPads for our arbitrators. We have big monitors that we roll in. So the technology needs are greater for in-person than they ever have been, which was interesting. And I'm part of the greener arbitration movement. AAA signed the pledge. I know other institutions did too. And we're happy to see that we don't see the big binders in the rooms any longer. So that's kind of nice. So, but it is a strain on us with respect to the technology. The interesting thing is that we're seeing with respect to in-person is the litigators seem to want it more than the arbitrators. And it seems like the arbitrators, they're going back if the parties want it, it's the parties' process. However, a lot of the arbitrators got used to doing the remote stuff. They mastered the technology, and they went to their vacation homes, and they said, well, this is kind of nice, being out in the Hamptons or Martha's Vineyard, and I wouldn't mind staying here. But, the parties are driving the process. But like I said before, with respect to mediation, that seems to be staying somewhat in the virtual world. So we'll see, how that turns. But, I think we're not going to be at full capacity by the end of the year, but maybe in a couple of years we'll be maybe 80% capacity with in-person. But I'm happy that people are using the virtual technology and we're all comfortable with it. And where I see it being used the most is with preliminary hearings now. In the past, it was by telephone. Now, a lot of arbitrators like to see the parties, initially, or the counsel, and get to meet them that way. So we're coming a long way, and it's I think the transitions it's going smoothly right now, which is nice.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I guess diving a little bit deeper in what you said. You said mostly arbitration is moving more towards in-person, and yet arbitration tends to involve more people. And
absolutely.
And yet mediation still tends to be a little bit more remote. Any further insight as to why that tends to be?
I think the mediators love the rooms that you can go into, the breakout rooms with the technology. And a lot of the mediators had never used that technology, and they saw the benefits of it. I did a very large case, over $1 billion case via mediation via virtual platform. And we had 40 participants, 6 parties, and we were able to quickly move people around in different rooms. So I think the mediators are seeing the benefits of that. And sometimes if there's a lot of tension between the parties, it's nice to be remote. You don't have to be there right in the room with the person that you're having a dispute with. So I think the mediators see a benefit of it. But then again, there's some mediators that say no, I prefer in person. It just depends on the mediators. But the trend that we're seeing is mostly a lot of the mediations are staying remote. Arbitrations are starting to slowly creep back into in person.
That's a very interesting observation then, because use of the breakout rooms is pretty fascinating. When I know when I've done mediations in person, this goes back a number of years, but it's like, okay, well, what breakout rooms do we have? And so sometimes even the host of the meeting would be scrambling to find a space that and it was even questionable if we'd have access to that space when we needed that space. And so
you're absolutely right, and we had that issue. We have 14 hearing rooms in my office in Midtown, and we had that problem because you need 3 rooms. But another thing, going back to arbitration, what we're seeing though with the in-person arbitrations, because of the pandemic, when we're moving out of the pandemic, one case would order multiple rooms because they want to be separated so they're continuing to do that. So in the past, we used to see they would rent 1 room. That was it. Now we're seeing when a big party comes into town to do an arbitration, they'll rent 2 rooms, 1 room for each party, and then a 3rd room for the case, and a 4th room for the arbitrator. So they're renting four rooms, so or five rooms. Yeah, so
Well, good income revenue for AAA then, right?
but it takes up a lot of our space. It's
Yeah.
interesting because sometimes I see the space that I work at full capacity, but it's only two cases because they're
Wow.
using up so many different rooms for one case. That wasn't the case in the past. I guess people they became used to being separated during the breaks.
Interesting, very interesting. That's it's interesting to find what drives, because I know I've been part of several different surveys over the last 3 years, sort of assessing lawyers and mediators and their preference for, the virtual platform versus in person. And I think pretty consistently, if I think back on some of the surveys we've done, is that a good 70% of people plan to continue virtual and liked it. And a very small percentage, said, I want back in person, and so,
Sure.
yeah.
But what we're doing, we're telling our arbitrators and mediators to make sure they're very clear on their resumes that we send out to the parties, whether or not they only want to do virtual or if they're willing to do in person and virtual. We want to make that very clear because we don't want someone to select an arbitrator or a mediator and then to come to find out that he or she does not want to go virtual or does not want to go in person. So, that's what we're requiring our arbitrators to do now and mediators.
Yeah. Well, I know it allowed me to go very virtual and allowed me to make some physical moves in terms of where I reside. But I'm still close enough that for my parties is that I will do it on request only, and and so try to manage things accordingly.
Absolutely. Well, we do, in addition to doing hearings, as you know, we're a not-for-profit. We do educational programs, and we're back to normal with doing a lot of educational programs, but we're doing most of them hybrid. And what we're seeing is a lot of these programs, if we offered hybrid, which we do most of them, you're going to get 60% virtual and about 40% in the room. So that's what we're seeing. But I do like the fact that we're getting an audience beyond just my greater New York area, because when I would do a program in the past, I would just get people in New York City or right outside New York City. Now we're seeing people from all over the world for some of our programs because of the virtual aspect. So that's kind of interesting, but we are doing a lot more in-person events now, receptions and things like that all around the country. And I know in my office, we probably do an event once a week, it seems like lately.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. That's really
educational
amazing.
programs on arbitration and mediation and things like that.
Yeah. I know when I've been a part of the educational programs with Harold, yes, we've had participants all over the country and other countries. And so we've had one person consistently from Costa Rica. So it's been very delightful to get that interplay of different cultural dynamics and just how different systems work and so forth. And so I would agree from my experience that, heck, I've even done programs in Hong Kong, and I have one coming up in July.
Absolutely. It's great to see the audience from around the world and the different kind of questions you get. I was so used to doing programs with just New Yorkers or the greater New York area. Now we're getting really interesting questions from people from all over the world, and it's giving us great exposure, the AAA ICDR, and just exposure about the benefits of alternative dispute resolution to tell the world, because ADR, as you know, is very, very popular in the United States, probably far more popular than most countries.
I would agree. You use an acronym, and I'm not sure everybody knows it. So ICDR.
Yes, that's the international branch of International Center for Dispute Resolution, and we combine it to AAA ICDR. We're one company, but they're a separate branch that oversees our international caseload. We have offices all over the world. One of our new offices is in Singapore, and we have a big staff that handles about 1,000 international cases per year.
Wow. Wonderful. Well, good. I know where I can go look in Singapore when I finally get there, hopefully in a couple of years.
Absolutely.
So maybe I can wrangle a training program or something to make it happen.
Well, when I say new office, it opened right before the pandemic, right there, about a couple, I think 6 months to a year before the pandemic hit. So kind of unfortunate timing, but now it's up and booming.
Up and thriving. Very good. How do, because I know a lot has emerged over time, as far as some of the ethical considerations about the virtual platform, and certainly confidentiality is a huge issue, and particularly in California. So how do the current rules, shall we say, of AAA address the use of technology from an ethical standpoint as well as a practical standpoint?
Well, our biggest concern obviously is ethics, but also cybersecurity, and making sure the platforms are secure. So, and confidential, that's really important. So in our new rules that we introduced in 2022, our commercial rules, two areas we put in technology, references to technology. We have a checklist for preliminary hearings in our commercial rules, and we added in cybersecurity, that the arbitrators and the parties should talk about, cybersecurity, privacy, data protection. That should be a discussion at the front end of the case. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our arbitrators were doing that prior to, the pandemic and prior to, they've been doing it for many years, but we put it in our rules. It's there. They can point to it and say, this is an important thing. Another area is video technology. We had that in our rules in the past, but now we really outlined it a little bit more in our new rules. And obviously arbitrators have the authority to say, this is going to go virtual. Are there concerns about, witness, tampering with a witness and things like that? There was just a recent case actually where a case was vacated because a witness was receiving text messages from his counsel. And the text messages were identical to what his text messages were identical to what counsel was giving, so they were able to prove that, and the case was vacated. So those are concerns, and we tell a lot of our arbitrators that you should tell the witness that you're under oath, and you can't can't have your counsel sitting there passing notes to you if you're in a virtual room. Another interesting thing we say, sometimes take the camera and go do a 360 view of the room for the witness. And I had an interesting thing the other day, a program where one of the arbitrators on the AAA panel said, well, to avoid that, sometimes we set up a situation where there's a camera behind the witness and a camera in front of the witness, so we can see if the witness is looking at his or her computer, iPhone, whatever. So these are concerns, but for the most part, it hasn't been a problem. Through the pandemic, we did thousands and thousands of cases, but it is a concern. But technology is important, and we're stressing that at AAA. And our biggest concern, again, is cybersecurity and making sure that our arbitrators are aware of it. The weakest link that we think is the sole practitioner arbitrator that is not tied to a firm, and therefore we're trying to make sure that they're up to speed on the latest technology.
I see. Okay. Because I know certainly in my mediation practice, there are some clientele who prefer to do it in person. I do a lot of work with school districts, and so depends on where you are, but some people are not as let's say active users of the virtual platform, and so they're less familiar, and they still want that person to person kind of contact.
Sure.
And I certainly am very willing to do that. What I find though is that even then there are still some participants who are virtual, but they're not set up properly in the in-person room to handle virtual. I just had that experience on Tuesday, and I was like, oh. And the other thing I would say, and I'd like your comment on this, is that virtual, we start on time. There's no problems with traffic or anything like that. And whenever I've done an in-person mediation these days, it's like we never get started on time. We lose 10 or 15 minutes as people trying to settle in and get there, et cetera. And then if there are any technology issues, which again happened Tuesday, we had to figure out, okay, how do we bring this person in? End up being by phone. We couldn't even get them on video, so it was just frustrating. I'm going, that's why I like virtual. We always start on time. We finish.
Always start on time. And the thing is, with respect to the virtual world, like you said, you don't have these delays. You don't have the attorney making a lot of money, the litigator, waiting in the hallway or waiting at the bottom of the building to get into the building. And that's on the client's time. So the clients are saving money here. And that's a good thing with respect to the virtual world, I think, where they're saving a ton of money, as opposed to being in person where you have delays sometimes, you have lunch breaks, all that kind of stuff. Virtual world, you have set hours, that's it.
Yeah. And I know, again, when I've even been late just because it's like getting from one place in San Diego County to another, traffic has gotten so much, more significant that you can't even rely on traditional driving times, even when you build in or pad in time. And so it's
Sure.
like, I'm so sorry. And I allowed an hour to get here, and it's like a 20-minute drive, or it should be a 20-minute drive, but yeah. So, well, very
Yeah,
good.
we have the issue. We have the security issue in the buildings. That's our issue. Getting people up to our hearing room sometimes can delay the hearing for 10, 15, 20 minutes. That's sometimes a problem.
Yeah. So there's some definite advantages to staying in the virtual world, but I appreciate the person-to-person contact too. So you've already mentioned cybersecurity, and I'm aware that you're offering some boot camps, shall we say?
Yes.
So
Yes.
hello.
Yes. Okay. I love these, and we were doing them prior to the pandemic. There's cybersecurity boot camps for our arbitrators. And like I said, I think the arbitrators are the weakest link. And most of the people that sign up for this program, this boot camp, are sole practitioners, or they just left a major law firm, sole practitioners. And we were doing a lot of them around the country prior to the pandemic. The pandemic hit, and we realized we really can't do them virtual. And I'll tell you why, because the cybersecurity boot camps are where we bring in 15 to 20 people, all around the country. We do a lot of them at my office. I think I have one coming up in September and one in November. We're bringing about 15 to 20 arbitrators, and we get a whole bunch of our tech staff at AAA. Probably about 6 to 7 of them will come to the training, and they'll sit down individually with the arbitrators, look at their laptops, look at their iPhones, their iPads, and tell them about various things that they can do, cybersecurity things, to make sure that their technology is secure. It's a half-a-day program, and we usually do two of them in one day. And then we also offer them a program that we call Case Shield. It's a new program at AAA. It's a remote secure desktop that we can install onto their iPhone, their laptop, and it's run by the AAA. It's through our server. It's protected, and we feel very comfortable about that. And we're starting to see a lot of our arbitrators taking us up on the offer for Case Shield. There's a price for it. It's not that expensive. I don't know the price of it, but it is a great thing for our arbitrators to be using. But the boot camps have been very, very successful. I've talked to a lot of our arbitrators that have gone through it, and an arbitrator the other day said, "I want to go back and do it again." So he or she, I forget what's a he. He's gonna go back in September to our boot camp, his second time around. But these are something. If you're a AAA arbitrator out there, definitely talk to your local vice president, your local regional office, and see when they're going to do one in your area. They're really important, I think.
Wonderful. I was just going to ask you, do you offer them in other places besides New York City? And you just answered my question. So
yes,
they
we do.
Be available in regional offices for AAA.
Absolutely. We have a number of offices around the country. I think we have 26 offices, and sometimes we do it out of law firms too. So if there's a need in a certain area, so if there's a need, we'll do it. And we offer this to all of our arbitrators. Even if you're an arbitrator in a major law firm that you already feel pretty secure, we still offer and say, you may be becoming a sole practitioner someday. You might want to learn about this kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, that sounds like an excellent opportunity. You made reference to the second program, and I'm not sure I actually captured it. Was Case Shield, or what was it?
It's called Case Shield. It's a remote platform, a secure desktop for our arbitrators that you log onto your computer, and you go right into this Case Shield, and it's secure. It's AAA oversees it. Make sure that all your information is maintained confidential, that people cannot break into this, and we monitor it closely at AAA. We've never had a problem at AAA with anyone breaching our system, and we feel we've been ahead of the curve with respect to cybersecurity, even way ahead of a lot of law firms. And I think that's a very important thing, because you hear about these nightmare situations. And as you know, everything that we do is confidential and private. We don't want people, having access to our case information. It's very, that's one of the reasons people come to AAA and other ADR providers, because it's a private forum.
Right.
There's trade secrets that we're dealing with. There's high profile, clients that we're dealing with. They really don't want their trade secrets leaked or anything out there about their backgrounds leaked to the public. And it's not and again, sometimes people say, well, that sounds like a star chamber. It's not, as you know. You're in the field of ADR. We have ethics, rules, and all that kind of stuff. It's just a confidential and private forum. It's not like an open public court system.
Yes. Okay. Well, and you and I both know, and probably a lot of our listeners do know, and if they don't, well, now they know. But that's the beauty of arbitration and mediation, is the confidentiality of it. In
Sure.
terms of, yeah, yeah.
We just added something in our new rules where the arbitrator can say to the parties that this aspect of the case is going to be confidential 100%, or the whole case is going to be confidential. So the arbitrators had that authority in the past, but now they can point to a rule in our new commercial rules and say, here's the rule. This whole process has to be confidential and private in a sense, because sometimes we were bound by these rules. AAA can never reveal a party or what the case is about. Same with the arbitrators, but sometimes the parties would go to the press or whatever. Now an arbitrator has that authority in the rules to say, nope, you got to keep this private. Otherwise, you could end up in court, or you can have a sanction issued by the arbitrator.
Excellent point. Excellent point. I know, for me, again, going back to the virtual platform, is that I love how we can manage the security of that and the confidentiality. And as I always emphasize to parties, is that we only we have a password and things like that, because we only let people who need to be here in. And so I always do a quick check. Okay, I have somebody in the waiting room that wasn't on my list of participants. Who is this? And sometimes people show up, that aren't invited. So it's just send a quick message and say, thank you very much for being here, but this isn't your meeting.
Yes. I mean, it's so much better than a telephone where, in the past you do a telephone conference and you'd hear beeps going on. You're like, oh, who just joined? With the virtual platforms, you see the telephone number, you see the person, and you say, well, why are you here? What's going on? So it is I think it's a good system for security to some extent. And there was a lot of concerns. I think we talked about this during the last podcast about the virtual platforms. And I think I said during that podcast that it wasn't the systems, it was the people. It was the people that were operating these systems. They weren't doing the proper settings and things like that. And so what we did, along with the other institutions, is we put together guidelines, and they're still on our website. Guidelines on, if you're using a virtual platform, here's what you should do to make sure it's secure. And I strongly believe this. It's not the systems. The systems have always been very, very secure. We heard a lot about the Zoom blasting and all that kind of whatever with that term they were using. And that was happening in a lot of schools because the students or the professors were not doing it properly, the settings. In the legal world, it really wasn't happening.
That's great to know. Yes. So much, the Zoom bloom, and we've evolved so much.
Zoom bombing. That's what I call it.
Zoom bombing. There we go. I forgot that.
See, we forgot. It's been so long. We're back into the real world again. We're forgetting about those terms.
Right. Well, it just shows how much we've evolved too, because you just don't hear about those kinds of issues anymore. It certainly was out there in the beginning, and protocols and procedures and so forth have definitely firmed up. But I want to ask you, Jeff, because now we have a whole new element evolving, and around artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And so I know I've been using things like ChatGPT and love it, and yet, you hear the cautionary tales and so forth. And so where is AAA on the use of AI?
Sure. Well, I'm personally excited about it. And I know this is interesting. The new president of the AAA, Bridget McCormick, former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Michigan, is, I'm not going to say a fan, but she's very interested in it. And actually a couple of her speeches that I've heard her talk at, she talks about AI. And one of them, she mentioned about how an AI program was able to do a bar exam within I think is like 6 minutes, complete bar exam. Okay. So the AI, the technology is amazing. And there's a lot of concern about it. But what we did at AAA, or what we're doing right now at AAA, we formed a committee that's looking into it. And I know there's some law firms that discourage any of their attorneys from using AI on the computers at their offices. We don't discourage it. We're actually saying, and I was at a training the other day, a staff training on innovation. And one of the discussions was, we encourage you, staff members, to look into it, try it, not on your cases, again, not on the cases that we're doing, but for things like, I'll give you an example that I've used it for. You work with the ABA a lot, as do I. And I was called by the ABA right before I had to get on a flight. and they go, can you put together a blurb on this podcast that you did a couple weeks ago? And I go, oh, I only got 5 minutes. So I quickly pulled up some of the stuff on my computer about that podcast and the people that were in it, I was in it, and I put it into an AI program, and it put together a wonderful little paragraph about the podcast. And I sent that on. So that was one way of using it. But at AAA, what we're doing is we're looking at it potentially, low dollar cases might be able to be handled with this technology. And I'm not saying we're getting rid of arbitrators. I'm saying where you can put in the damages, quantify the damages, or even make a decision on a low dollar case and say to the parties, this is what we had through the AI system. Do you want to accept this or go to arbitration? I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen, but that's, people, we're discussing things. We're keeping an open mind about it. And we're looking at a transcript service right now at AAA where this new transcript service where it can take the place of, of a person, okay? And it's about 95% accurate. And then if you get a human involved to look at it, and which you have to do, it becomes about 99% accurate. And then this AI transcript service is about 50% less expensive than actually using a person to transcribe the whole hearing. So that's something that we're looking at right now at AAA. And I think there's a lot of opportunities here. I know there's people that are concerned about it. There was that case, I know you probably heard about it. The New York Times talked about this case a couple of weeks ago where an attorney actually did a brief and the AI generated false cases that didn't really exist. Okay. And, so we don't want people to use it that way. And what we're looking at is secure platforms that we want to generate a secure AI platform that's not out to the public, but it's, contained at the AAA. So we'll see. I mean, it's really early. It's really early in this stage, but I'm glad that our new president formed a committee immediately, and a team of, I think, 10 to 15 people are on that committee internally at AAA and testing it and looking at it. So we'll see. It is the future, but I mean, I don't think we should be afraid of it.
Yeah. Well, I definitely share that perspective too. And when I was introduced to ChatGPT, I think it was back in February, and it was like, oh, this is amazing. And I've got my content matter that I speak and write a lot about, and so it's been great to say, okay. I mean, one of the things as a writer, sometimes it's like, where do I start? What are some ideas?
Exactly.
And so it's really been great in that sense because with some of my bullet points, shall we say, like for a speech or a presentation or even an article, I can put in, some key, your query questions are really key in getting the right kind of information. And, but it's like, oh, well, that's exactly what I would have said, but now it just gave me the verbiage. I don't have to spend time. I can actually polish it now rather than starting from scratch.
Exactly. And we shouldn't be afraid to say that we're using it. I told the ABA when I sent it over to someone from the ABA, I said, listen, I just used AI to do this. It looks great. And I had a colleague that was struggling with coming up with the name of a program. She was putting together an ADR program, and she goes, oh, I can't figure out a good name for this. And she put some information into the chat GPT, or GPT, that's correct. And it came up with a great name for this program. So there's a lot of little benefits that we can use. And I'm really glad that AAA has an open mind about it, because I know there's, some people are concerned about it, are real concerned about it.
No, I hear you. And like anything, it's sort of like when, computers evolve and they say, oh, it's going to, eliminate jobs and so on. Well, you still have to have people to oversee it. And so we have brand new jobs that have developed, as a result.
Exactly.
And
that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. And so I really see AI sort of being that same way. Yeah, it's a new innovation and it's got tremendous capacity, just like computers did when they came out, but it still takes the human. And so I've heard many people say, if you don't have humans, who's the verbiage going to go to anyway? So
yeah. Now imagine if we had to go back to using maps in our cars. I mean, I couldn't imagine. I remember those days. So that's why I'm excited about AI, because it really will, I think, make us more efficient. Definitely, because I remember the days of faxes too, and I remember the days of hard copies. And AAA has gone completely paper. We went paperless. Probably about over 10 or 15 years ago. And people were concerned about that back then. I remember that. And I remember the days of coming to my office where the fax machine, the things were rolled up on the floor and things like that. So we're evolving, which is nice.
We are evolving. That's very true. Very true. Well, Jeff, there is one or two key things that you see in the future of AAA or mediation arbitration, what would those be?
Well, I think one of the big things is, and when we're doing a push at AAA for this, is working with the court systems around the world, not just around the United States, to say, hey, listen, we're not a competitor. We are, we're here to help you out. We know the court systems were shut down during the pandemic for about 2 or 3 months, and they still that created a backlog, but they had a backlog before then. So what I'm seeing is more cooperation with the court systems. I'm seeing the court systems are doing a lot of ADR programs nationwide. Here in New York, they keep on rolling out ADR programs internally at the court systems. But I want, hopefully the AAA and other ADR institutions, private institutions, could be there to help them, to say, hey, listen, for your overflow, come to AAA, or have your clients come, or have the people that are filing lawsuits come to AAA. And I love the fact that people are embracing arbitration and mediation more. Every year it grows. We're seeing such tremendous growth at AAA. In the last couple of years, it's grown tremendously. But in my career at AAA, I mean, I started in 1990. It has grown so significantly, and that's great. The word's getting out, and I think it's because people like you that are talking about it all the time, and people, my colleagues at AAA and other institutions, and people are seeing the benefits of it, definitely. So I think that's a good thing. And what we do too, in addition to talking to the court systems, we talk to the future lawyers. And I speak at law schools all the time. And I think that's important, making sure that the young lawyers realize, like when I went to law school, we weren't thinking about arbitration or mediation. We were thinking about getting into a courthouse, going into a trial, litigation, whatever. That was our focus. But I think if we start talking to the young lawyers, saying, "Hey, this is the way to go. You're going to save your clients a lot of money, a lot of time." So I'm really looking forward to the future because it keeps on getting better with ADR.
Yep. Yeah. It's, what's the old saying, we've come a long way, baby, but we've got a long way yet to go. So I'm excited about the future too, because I think back, like you, I started in mediation in the early 90s. And sometimes I scratch my head and go, wow, we're still talking about, educating the public about mediation and arbitration. It's like, oh, when are you going to get it?
I know. It's crazy that we're still talking about. The thing that drives me crazy, we're still talking about people about poorly drafted clauses. And I've been doing programs on that for 20 years, and people still draft clauses that I can't believe why they would draft it that way for an arbitration. But I think we keep on moving ahead. And like I said, our caseload is increasing. I talk to my colleagues in other institutions, they're seeing a big increase. People are accepting it more. When I first got the job at the American Arbitration Association, people were like, what is arbitration? I remember my colleagues saying that, my friends. So that's not the case any longer. I think people know what arbitration is in the general community.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting, and I'm so appreciative of your leadership and your eloquence in getting the word out there, and just your enthusiasm for solving disputes differently. And and so Jeff, thank you so much again, being from the American Arbitration Association and all the great work you do. And sorry I missed you when I was in Manhattan, but another time,
Next time. And Deborah, thank you so much for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure working with you on ABA stuff. And next time you're in New York, we got to get together. Definitely.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, thank you again. And to our DCM community, this is Jeff Zaino with the American Arbitration Association. And again, if you haven't thought about using arbitration or mediation, please do so. There's a different way to solve disputes, and much more peaceful too. So thank you again. Join us next time.
Right.
Over and out.
Thanks.
Well, I certainly hoped that you gained and learned a great deal from Jeff Zaino. He is such I think a spectacular individual and very well known in the legal and mediation and arbitration circles. So again, pass it on. Our next guest speaker coming up, Christian de la Huerta. And Christian has an incredible journey of his own, being born and raised in Cuba, and his family immigrating into the southeastern part of the country, and comes from a family of 9 kids, just like me. And so we hit it off in that regard, although our birth order is very different. But Christian, on his journey, has written a book, Awakening the Soul of Power, and how to transform our relationship to power. in a healthy and positive way. So mark your calendar, 2 weeks from today, come back to Decoding the Conflict Mindset and listen to Question de la Huerta. Dr. Deborah Dupree, the Mindset Doc. See you soon.